I always come back.
The following contains
spoilers
for Five Nights at Freddy's.
Welcome back. I understand this is a bit of a surprise. I apologize that it's taken us this long to do another episode, but recently there was a movie that came out that I felt had to be covered by Weirdflix, and that is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Now, since I've been away for so long, I couldn't just bring you another simple review of me talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. So I had to tap my very good friend Jon, who has seen absolutely nothing related to Five Nights at Freddy's at all.
Yeah, pretty much.
He has no frame of reference. I have seen
cultural osmosis.
Cultural osmosis, but he has done no research of his own, whereas I have seen all the game theory episodes of Five Nights at Freddy's, along with numerous songs, books, gameplay videos, the work.
I mean, you guys can't see it in the shot, but like his FNAF doctorate is like right up on the wall. It's
I graduated from Fazbear University.
I'll kill you.
We're going to go over the movie with you. We're going to tell you if we think it's worth watching. And yeah, we're just going to get right into it.
Weirdflix.
Do you want to get initial reactions out of the way?
I would say my expectations were rock bottom. I'll be entirely candid. I was pleasantly surprised.
I was as well, I have to admit. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie, you hear that name and you think bottom of the barrel quality. And they got Blumhouse for it, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Because Blumhouse knows horror movies, but they know cheap horror movies.
Sure.
But I think Blumhouse was the right pick for a production company for this movie.
Okay, so for the uneducated, because I assume that the viewers are used to that slop, what is Blumhouse?
So Blumhouse is a film company that became popular a couple years ago with like The Conjuring,
so that's like
Annabelle, movies like that.
Okay, so that's like real
I
movies.
believe that was Blumhouse. Don't quote me, but I believe that's Blumhouse. And they basically make, not bottom of the barrel, but they make cheaper movies compared to most other studios. So they can make, they spent maybe $500,000 on Five Nights at Freddy's compared to another studio that would spend $200 million or something like that. They're coming in under budget, ahead of schedule, with a noticeable drop in quality, but honestly, this movie was not that bad.
No. So that is something that I did want to bring up, and I feel like it's coming up organically here. It probably should have been further deep, but
it's fine.
Yeah, so I think that despite your claim that they're a low-budget production studio and that or production house, whatever the hell you call it, despite the fact that they're known for being low budget, I think they did a surprisingly good job of making a good movie despite the low budget. And I know you joked about while watching that there's like 3 locations.
There is.
There's the pizzeria, there's
Creepy Dream Forest,
and a house. And then they booked a storage locker for one of the
shots. Well, I think that was
scenes.
just part of the FNAF of the Freddy Fazbear Pizza.
Okay.
That they just changed the props in.
That would
that was probably the office, and they just put a couple lockers in there.
But be that as it may, I think they did a really good job of utilizing that, and I honestly don't think that if you wouldn't have said anything, I wouldn't have noticed. I think they did a very good job of organically using only 3 sets, and at no point did I really find myself like asking, oh, there should be more sets. Like, why did they go to this location? Like, it worked naturally.
Blumhouse is very skilled at getting more out of less.
Yeah.
They really are the best at that kind of thing. Just making these low-budget movies that don't look too bad. It's something that I applaud them for. I don't have a taste for a lot of their movies. They don't make a lot of stuff that I really get into or enjoy.
Well, the other part of that I wanted to bring up was the animatronic suits.
Mm-hmm.
Those were... So I know from out of the movie that they were real suits.
Yeah.
Those were real, but they were practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so one, I commend them for actually doing practical effects. I think that was it's really good to see in an age where everything can be done by CGI or AI. It was really nice to see a studio actually use special effects, especially one that is known for being budget.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if you're only using 3 sets, you got that money from somewhere. Like you can afford to spend some more on the suits. But the other thing of it too is, honestly, in a lot of the shots, I would have told you they were like CGI. To me, they didn't look real.
I think that's a positive because it's obviously based off of a video game. And it's very hard to translate the cartoonish kind of video game style to real life. So any real life version of that is going to look, for lack of a better term, not real. So I think that's actually a credit to them kind of getting the costumes pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think the aesthetic was definitely right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mean, I can't speak to the games, but the aesthetic worked. I think that they did a very good job on set design. I think everything looked very visually pleasing.
The only real problem I had was with William Afton's suit. I feel like that one didn't quite fit as well. It seemed a little off to me because I think they designed that one specifically to make it look like somebody's wearing it, as opposed to the other ones which are designed to look like robots are wearing them. And I get that's part of the thing, but like it looked like they
That's
didn't...
like the point.
No,
That's
I
the
understand.
entire point.
What I mean is that it didn't look like they came from the same restaurant. And they like showed the photograph of it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be different.
Yeah, I get that it's supposed to be different, but I didn't love it. And I know in lore, technically that came from Fredbear's Pizza, the original restaurant. So I know it's different, but the lore of the movie is different from the lore of the games, which actually caught me by surprise. And I think at this point it's probably best if we kind of get into the plot itself. So the movie starts out, there's a security guard who gets killed at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. We cut to Mike, our main character, who is raising his sister, Abby, after his mom died and his dad left. This is because Mike kind of let his brother get kidnapped when he was a kid. It's
The film implies that he's liable.
He's
but
not. There's
outside
nothing.
looking in, it's kind of like...
There's really no reason. I mean, I get it's traumatic, but there's really no reason he should be blaming himself this hard.
I don't want to say that. I feel like it's an important underpinning of the film. His blame, his guilt in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that obviously he blames himself. His self-blame is not unfounded. Outside looking in, the dude picked up like a frisbee and looked away for maybe 5 seconds of film time, but you really could not say that he's in any way culpable for that.
No, it's not his fault. And that's kind of a hangover from the games where, if I remember correctly, in the video games, he actually kills his brother. He shoves him into Freddy's head and then Freddy bites him.
That'd do it, yeah.
And his entire frontal lobe is removed. We see Mike taking care of Abby, and he goes to his job as a security guard where he sees a kid getting kidnapped. Kidnapped. And it's just his dad taking him out because the kid's being fussy or whatever. And he tackles the guy and he just beats him.
The ever-loving
in a mall fountain. And he gets fired and he has to go meet Steve Ravgan?
Spoilers.
Steve fake name, it's William Afton.
I called that I haven't even played one of the games.
It's
not...
It's very obvious. But he tells him, oh, you should go work at Five Nights at Freddy's. And then he goes to work at Freddy's and he sleeps. And a big part of the movie is he's doing this dream therapy
These
thing.
dream sequences, yeah. I wouldn't call it therapy. Yeah.
It picked up some weird theory that we never forget anything. And he's trying to relive his brother's kidnapping to figure out who kidnapped him.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting element. That's not really from the games. But when he does it in Freddy's, the ghosts of the children who got murdered at Freddy's, those children are in his dreams somehow. It's never really explained. I guess just because they're ghosts. It's when he falls asleep at Freddy's that he has the dream.
I feel like at that point, that's the kids intervening.
I guess it's just because he's in the location.
Yeah, you're in the Overlook Hotel of animatronic. Like, yeah, they're gonna intervene.
I'd love to see Jack Nicholson in this movie. So we find out that the aunt wants to get custody of Abby for some reason, and she's paying a babysitter to sneak into their house to try to find evidence. The babysitter and her brother come up with the idea to break into Freddy's to make him look bad at his job as security guard. This is also where we get the Matt Pat cameo.
Oh,
the
shit,
game
good,
theory cameo was the best part of the movie.
I will say, like, subjectively speaking, immediate hindrance. As soon as either one of us saw his face, that scene was just gone.
Yes.
Like, just whatever the hell they were saying, just not paying attention. Even remotely.
They really should have had him do anything else where it was like not plot relevant, because this was semi-plot relevant. And as soon as I saw him on screen, I immediately forgot everything else about that scene and focused on that.
Matt
Pat shows up. Yeah. They decide to break into Freddy's. And they break into Freddy's during the day. The previous night, he met Vanessa, who he thinks is just a police officer. But Vanessa knows way too much about Freddy's to be just a police officer.
Yeah, that's telegraphed from like a mile away. Like,
one thing Blumhouse isn't is subtle. They break into Freddy's. The animatronics get a little bit quirky at night.
Yeah, first hit, are you kidding? They kill the guy in the first shot.
Like, yeah, well, that's at night. This is the animatronics. This is the animatronics getting quirky during the day. Cupcake kills a guy. The Bonnie kills a guy in a closet.
There's 3 people they all get murdered.
Yeah, no, there's 4 people that all get murdered. They reenact. Remember? Foxy chases someone down in a hallway, and the girl gets bitten by Freddy. And it's very strange because Freddy somehow bites her in half at the waist.
Yeah, bitch gets bisected. Like,
Even though there's no way that he could have bitten her, like he had to suck her in and then bite at the waist. There's no way she was fitting in there.
That's where we draw the line here at Weirdflix. When like, the animatronic costume was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Bitch is cut in half? Whoa.
Suspension of disbelief only goes so far. So Vanessa comes to his house and yells at him for people breaking in during the day when he's not on duty because they think they left a door open.
Yeah, it was the film does a very bad job, and this is a very small nitpick, but it just it pulls you out of it for a second, where Mike meets Vanessa. They hang out all night, whatever, because she's clearly very familiar with the place, because, reasons. And they're having a grand old time. She literally watches him lock up and leave. They leave at the same time. Like
within a couple seconds.
She's been aware of all of his action, and she leaves first. So it's not like Mike would have gone and unlocked the doors. And she still blames him for them breaking in. She's probably just trying to scare him off.
Right. Actually, that makes sense.
After this whole diatribe, like as I'm saying,
that makes a lot more sense. And that actually makes this movie a little bit smarter than
Let's not call it smart.
It's a little bit more clever than I originally gave it credit for. Because that explains why she overreacted and why she made a couple of the stupid decisions she made that we thought were stupid throughout the movie that she made because she's just trying to scare him off.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it of like, oh, this is a nice charismatic guy. Like, let's make sure he doesn't make it to the fifth night at Freddy's.
I believe the movie actually takes place over 5 nights. I didn't count, but I believe so.
If it doesn't, someone needs shot.
I have to agree. I have to agree. So, Vanessa tries to scare him off. He goes back and he has to bring Abby to work. And this is when we get kind of a unique twist on it, where the animatronics become Abby's friend. And it's shown throughout the movie that Abby's a weird kid. She just draws pictures a lot. She doesn't engage with people. And here she is singing and dancing with the animatronics. And as somebody who's played Five Nights at Freddy's a lot, it's very weird to see it. It's not that it's bad. It's just different because every other interaction that the people in Five Nights at Freddy's has, with like 1 or 2 exceptions, has been gruesome murder. So they become friends with them. They bring Abby home, and then the next day,
is a strong word.
And then the next day they come back and they're having fun. They are building a big fort.
It's important to mention Vanessa is there for all of this.
That's true, and she's not reacting to the fact that these animatronics are leaving the stage and like interacting with this child. It's like this is old news.
And despite the complete upheaval to the plot that we've been doing, it was very heavily implied from the get-go that she knew a little bit more than she was letting on. And I think I even said, like, oh, she's really after this kid, isn't she?
I actually, I don't know if you said that, but that caught me by surprise. I really didn't see that coming.
It did not surprise me.
Well,
there's a mention where she's like, "Oh yeah, the security guards don't last very long here." ... You haven't met them, have you?
You met them yet?
Met who?
Like a very clear, like, "Oh yeah, I know there's little kids stuffed inside the animatronics."
Abby ends up getting electrocuted by Bonnie because Five Nights at Freddy's, the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is a death trap.
Yeah, they're over there strumming on an electric fence with a guitar. Like
Vanessa threatens to shoot Mike, and Mike...
That was weird, by the way. That really... I know I commended the movie for doing a very good job of immersing you and making very jarring things. In retrospect, not seeing that jarring in the moment. Whenever this lady is just like, "I'll shoot you," well, it's like, that just felt real weird.
No, so that, I did feel a little weird, but that was her trauma response, whereas his is beating the out of that guy.
No, I'm talking like writing. So that was something else.
It's Blumhouse. They had one guy write this. Mike calls his aunt to take care of Abby for the night because he wants to go back to Freddy's to talk to the ghost children.
We forgot about the dream sequences up to this point, but that has been advancing in the background.
The dream sequences are just him reliving his brother's kidnapping with the ghost children he's occasionally talking to.
And the reason being is that he thinks that in reliving this, there's a chance that he will identify the kidnapper and be able to bring them to justice or whatever.
They also, it should be mentioned that the ghost children tell him in one of these sequences, "We'll let you know who kidnapped your brother, but what will you give us in return?" And he says anything. And that's a really bad decision.
Yeah.
Pro tip, when you're negotiating with ghost children, never offer them anything. Try pizza first.
So the list goes, if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. And if you're negotiating with ghost children, you want to give a solid response.
You want to negotiate. You want to haggle a little bit.
The dream sequence up to this point she had been helping in the dream sequences. She had drawn a picture of his brother's kidnapping, which she wouldn't have known to draw.
She wasn't
And
born
so-
then.
Yeah, the implication being like, oh, she knows something about this. Let's bring her back to the death amusement park to try and coax a little more out of the kids. And so that was his plan. Vanessa pulls him aside later and is like, bro, you're and founded because she's over there touching the electric fence guitar.
Yeah.
At that point, I feel like that was almost a turning point for him of realizing like maybe he's not a sound enough mind to be a guardian. At least get the gears turning towards potentially handing her over to his aunt.
So Mike goes back to Freddy's to negotiate with the ghost children, where they offer him the ability to basically live a pseudo life with his brother and his parents in like the perfect fantasy. For a split second, either he indicates yes or he indicates a positive some way.
He already indicated yes.
He already indicated yes.
He already said,
And
I'll
the-
give you anything you want. He
And
gave
then-
him a blank check.
And then he realizes that is a stupid idea because he thinks back to his sister.
The kids do not like that.
They start cutting him. They cut him. Freddy's still got shooters out here. So the kids go to Mike's house in kind of a weird ghost Fazbear suit, because it doesn't look like the Freddy we've seen up to this point.
Yeah.
And they kill the aunt.
I don't think they kill her.
I'm telling you, they kill her. The kid's like, oh, she's sleeping. They objectively killed her.
She's neutralized.
They kidnap Abby and bring her back to Freddy's. And Mike is taken in by Vanessa to a police safe house or something to stitch him up from his
Bro, it was
many
a storage.
wounds.
It was a storage
It was a storage locker. And then this is where we get the big reveal that Vanessa is William Afton's daughter, which I didn't see coming. And so they have to figure out how to go fight the animatronics. They give him tasers. He goes back to Freddy's, and Abby doesn't know that anything's wrong.
By this point, Mike's storming the palace. He's trying to save his sister.
He electrocutes Freddy and Bonnie, stops Chica from shoving Abby into the baby animatronic.
Spring lock. They say the word.
They say spring lock. They say spring lock.
And they set this up earlier. To their credit, they did a
Check
halfway
off-
decent job.
Check off
of-
spring.
Yeah,
Check off spring locks. And they almost get to the exit. And at this point, we see William Afton in his Springtrap Bonnie suit.
Well, you don't know that it's him yet, but
There's been 6 characters in the movie. If at this point you don't know it's the guy, like at this point they're heavily hinting to it. You can hear Matthew Lilliard's slightly altered voice coming out of the robot.
And in case you weren't quite sure, the taser, which has worked to neutralize every animatronic, it doesn't work on him. Because he's a guy in a suit.
William Afton beats up Mike. Mike is unconscious, and Vanessa holds him hostage with a gun. She shows up and saves Abby from
I wouldn't say
getting
it's a hostage, just like quit being a
Yeah.
shoot you. Like,
Abby is saved by Vanessa from Foxy. Vanessa tases Foxy, and Vanessa then threatens to shoot her dad.
Yeah.
And he is very clearly not impressed. He doesn't think she's going to do it. And she does shoot him. But the suit is, I guess, bulletproof. It doesn't really do anything.
Right.
Anyways, William has kind of control over the rest of the animatronics because he's convinced them that he helped them somehow. Because it's kind of hinted at throughout the movie that children respond well to pictures, and the animatronics are just children. And there's a big picture on the Freddy's corkboard of the yellow rabbit holding hands with all of them. So William stabs Vanessa after he realizes that she's not going to help him, and he turns around to kill Mike. But Mike tells Abby to show them what he did. And I really liked this part, because William's closing in, he's going to get ready to kill Mike. And Abby sketches out a drawing of William killing the children, and then pins it to the corkboard, which lets the animatronics know, oh, things are going down.
I don't think it's so much that it lets them know. I think it's implied in the movie that Afton has a certain amount of control over them. It might be hampering their memory. And in fairness, that does a very good job of addressing a problem I had with the movie of like, why are these kids vindictive little Like obviously there's a certain to the hand they've been dealt, but it doesn't necessarily explain the malfeasance that they're, doing. But in that moment, it kind of shows like, oh, Afton has an amount of control over them. And while originally that guy, whenever they said it, it comes across like, yeah, sure, whatever. In that moment, it kind of makes sense of him like kind of artificially manipulating their memories, trying to manipulate their kids. Like obviously you can manipulate them a little bit easier than you would anyone else. And just kind of like obscuring the fact that like, oh, he's a murderer. With the picture being shown, it almost implies a certain autonomy being granted to them, that like, oh, they see the whole picture now, they understand what happened to them, and they understand who did it.
The animatronics attack him, and the cupcake bites him in the chest. And this sets off the spring trap.
They set this up.
They do set this up.
Check of a spring.
And they start, to give them credit, I think this movie's PG-13. They show the spring traps like breaking his bones and organs.
I wouldn't say breaking it.
They're impaling him. They're doing some serious damage.
There is blood.
And so I thought that was very well done on their part. And so William is trapped in the suit, and he says the iconic line, "I always come back." And he puts the suit on, and the animatronics drag him away as Freddy's kind of comes down around them. Mike gets Abby and Vanessa out, and then it kind of cuts to an epilogue. Abby is shown adjusting better to kids. She's playing with actual people instead of talking to ghosts. They visit Vanessa in the hospital, and Mike is shown to be a better caretaker, having gone through this with Abby.
And Vanessa is still comatose, which is...
Sequel bait.
Yeah.
Sequel bait. The final scene of the movie is William Afton in kind of the back room of Freddy's, in the iconic twitching position that you've seen him in the games, if you played those, of the Springtrap suit, still crushing all of his internal organs, putting him in immense pain as he reaches towards Ghost Freddy, who locks the door on him, leaving his fate ambiguous, but as he says, he always comes back.
It's sequel bait.
It's sequel bait. I'm hoping for a sequel, honestly. I would see Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in R&B.
I wouldn't see it in theaters. I'd watch it again, though.
You'd watch it again? I would.
We do live in the day and age where Michael Scorsese's over there beating on the drum of films need to be 5 hours without intermissions, and you can't break it up. You gotta watch that in one sitting. I'm a big fan of whenever a film is self-aware enough to know to not be more than 2 hours.
I really think, honestly, I think no movie should be longer than 90 minutes, and that's my honest opinion.
You're wrong. You're not just wrong, you're stupid. But
I really don't. I mean, I think 90 minutes is a good time for a movie. It's kind of the standard. This moved at a very brisk pace. They were able to move at a brisk pace.
The pacing was good. The pacing
was great. They didn't really miss out on anything. I think if it had been 2 hours, what else were they going to fill it with?
No, and I feel like in this film it shouldn't have been 2 hours, but in general, I feel like once you go over 2 hours, you have to work extra hard to justify it.
I agree with that.
And you have films like The Godfather, like whatever, like obviously The Godfather,
yeah,
that justify that extra hour and change that it runs for. If this would have tried to go for like 2:30, I would have been irate.
I would have really enjoyed seeing the 2 hour and 30 minute cut, though. I think that would have been fun.
Yo, your brain's smooth. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I was pleasantly surprised by the cause and effect in this movie. So
you mean the South Park because of?
Yeah, exactly. Like there was very little.
I should explain that for those who don't know. Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park fame came up with kind of a succinct way to see if your plot is good, which is everything should say because of, or what's the other one?
Well, I don't necessarily know what the good ones are, but the bad one is and then.
And then, yeah. It has to be because of, and then there's another one that I can't remember. Due to something like that. Like clear cause and effect.
Yeah, you're implied. There's an implied causality in everything that happens. And what I did notice in this movie, and I wasn't really paying attention to it at the end because it kind of swept up in the moment. But
yeah,
in the beginning when I was paying attention to it, there was definitely a very good cause and effect flow to it. At no point did it really feel like, oh, this was happening because the plot demands it. I felt like it moved very organically through the plot. You could kind of get into some moments of like, oh, it just happens to be William Afton, but like, yeah, I don't know about that. That felt fine. And this was a very good example of like what would ordinarily be a very dumb decision of like, let's bring your daughter to work day.
Bringing your sister to the creepy abandoned pizza place.
Yeah, bring your sister to work day. It makes sense in the movie, and what would ordinarily be like a big red flag. Like, ooh, that does make sense. It does fit in the movie. It never really interrupts I feel like it fit very well, and that was something that I was pleasantly surprised by. I expected this to just be kind of random ChatGPT blurbs, like haphazardly stitched together.
Fair enough.
It worked surprisingly well.
Well, there's no AI in this movie. It's all ghosts.
Am I supposed to laugh?
They changed the lore from the games in that in lore, the Afton family is William Afton, his wife whose name I don't remember, his son Michael, the daughter who I guess is maybe named Abby, I don't remember, and the other son that gets killed whose name I don't remember. I think it was Gilbert in the movie? Garrett. It was Garrett. In the movie, Mike and Garrett and Abby are a family, and then William Afton is completely unrelated, who has a daughter who is Vanessa from Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which I thought was a unique take. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting it to be revealed that was his dad, like in a disguise or something, and there was something going on there.
Wait, you thought the live human actor was his dad in a disguise?
I thought I thought maybe he had it had been years since he saw him. So he left as a kid. We didn't really get a close up of the dad in the movie. So I thought maybe it was his son gets kidnapped and he forgot that his dad kidnapped him, and because the games are always, it's this one family that is going on a child murdering rampage, and it kind of is, but it's not with the people that we know from the game, which was different for me. It gave me a twist. Another reason I recommend people who like the game see this movie, because it's different than the games.
I suppose, so one thing that I thought was worth mentioning is that something that I think you've seen a lot, or that we all kind of seen a lot in films recently, is this idea of taking an independent story and almost shoehorning it in to an existing IP. And basically...
What do you mean?
The idea being that someone has an idea they want to pitch to a studio of hey, let's make this. They're like, we don't know if it'll get enough viewers. And they're like, make it in Star Wars.
Oh,
and all
I see
of a
what
sudden,
you're... Okay,
it's everyone's all over it.
Yeah.
Something that I think there was a certain element of this here, but I think it worked surprisingly well in that the trauma that Mike experienced is related to the abduction of children. That ties into William Afton abducting children. They did a very good job of tying it into the source material. And while I'm sure you could argue that, there's maybe a very artsy film of, someone overcoming the trauma of their brother being abducted, they did a very...
Which is this film, I want to make it very clear. That's this movie!
They did a very good job of integrating it. And I feel like something I noticed when watching is all right, is this going to be a shoehorn? They did a very good job of integrating it, making it feel natural. This IP was a very good fit to the narrative that already existed, or even still, what's far more likely is they wrote a narrative independent of all of that nonsense that fits the IP. And I feel like it did a very good job of feeling organic. It's an existing IP, but I feel like it didn't have that same level of just shoehornness, insertedness. It felt pleasant, organic, that kind of thing.
I agree. So this is where I get to kind of unload secret Five Nights at Freddy's lore on you, where the official timeline for Five Nights at Freddy's is a mess. There's an indeterminate amount of children that have been murdered. There's this thing called Remnant that is the mix of ghosts of children and their essence that's combined with machinery that's sometimes a liquid, sometimes it's not a real thing. All kinds of stuff in the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I listed the highlights. There's not a lot else I can say about it other than just random facts.
Something that I thought that was a little bit odd is William Afton in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that he was as well set up as he could have been. So the extent to which you see him on screen, we'll even do referred to. So you see him on screen in the beginning as the Career Services Counselor.
Yes.
Later then, you see him mentioned by his daughter, who at that point you do not know. I guess
they're leading up to it. They're building up to it.
She says it in the same scene that she's his daughter. Then later you have the reveal of him being in the suit. And at that point you could have realized that during the beginning 8-bit credits you see the rabbit abducting people. That would have been him. Something that I felt was a little bit jarring is there's really no motivation for him as a character. And in that he's just kind of a force, just kind of this thing abducting children. But I feel that I would have wanted a lot more out of him as a character. Not necessarily a lot more, but just why is he doing it?
So that's...
You said in the lore that it's because his son died and trying to bring back his son in the animatronic suit, and he's using these children as kind of test dummies. That's not in any way shown in the movie. And I think that for me, it left me feeling a little bit lacking. That there wasn't necessarily a reason beyond just, he's fucking weird, that he's abducting these kids, shoving them in animatronic suits. It's kind of serial killer of the week vibes, as opposed to, this is a character with at least some vague motivation. I'm not asking for deep characterization, but just a reason for doing it.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there, and to be fair, in the original games, he didn't have that motivation. As far as anyone knew, for the first 3 games to 4 games, depending on how you count it, he was just a guy who wanted to kill kids and used a pizza restaurant that he owned to do it. But other than that, it's really not explained in the games very well. So that if they do sequels, I think they will go maybe into that a little more. They might give Vanessa a brother, which is why she's so freaked out and traumatized. Maybe the dad killed him by accident and he's trying to bring him back. Something like that, I think, could be played into it more. Because they do have room for a sequel here. They've sequel baited. There's obviously enough leftover lore for them to make another movie.
I don't mean to keep derailing it, but I was pleasantly surprised by almost the lack of sequel bait. This feels entirely self-contained, and that's okay.
I want to touch on that a little bit. Here's my pitch for the sequel, okay?
Oh god.
The sequel is Vanessa miraculously wakes up from the coma. She starts killing kids, and Mike is like, oh, she's back, she's alive, this is weird. But she's got a different personality, because in this movie, she's relatively happy.
She's possessed by William
Because
Afton.
she's possessed by William Afton, and they go back to the ruins, and they find him half dead, but somehow like in control of his daughter. Because that's what happens in the games. I could see that as a sequel. It's pretty easy. You keep the same actors. They're probably not going to renegotiate their contracts.
That's something else I want to touch on with the actors. I would say the performances here were pretty good overall. Nothing to write home about. I wouldn't say anything particularly exceptional.
They did their job. It's a Blumhouse film. You're not expecting Oscar-worthy acting. They did their job. I wasn't taken out of the movie at all.
There was no Oscar-worthy moment. However, I would say in particular, Matthew Lillard at the end in the animatronic suit, I would assume that's practical.
It was. He was wearing the suit. It wasn't green screen, I can tell you that much.
He did a very good job. And again, to the green screen, either they did the best green screen I've seen anyone pull with that shit in a movie, or they did it practical. And in that instance, it really did pay off. His acting as well, very, very good. And there was particularly like guttural scream as the cupcake rips out his fucking liver or whatever. He did a very good job of acting and emoting in what is a very glorified Chuck E. Cheese suit. Like, he did a very good job of that. Other than that, I would say the acting was average.
Yeah.
But whenever you're expecting rock bottom, it's pleasantly surprising.
Riveting note-checking content.
So I suppose something that I wrote down is kind of Vanessa as a love interest.
Ed could take it or leave it. It's not really a huge part of the movie.
Well, what I feel like this might have been a flaw. In the beginning with the babysitter, do you remember?
I want to say Alex, but I could be wrong.
Alex the babysitter we'll go with. They almost imply a certain romantic relationship in that they're watching the QVC.
It does seem like his girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah, and there's this ad for a ring, and it's like, oh, I wish someone would buy me a ring. And it's offhanded.
We've all been there, ladies. For the one female viewer we have.
As the pretentious film analyst. Obviously, they did that for a reason. And the implication being is that romantic love interest setup. And it doesn't go anywhere. She gets bit the in half.
She does. She gets bite of 87.
Dead. But it still kind of leaves that you could argue that's a red herring, but it still leaves that element of like, oh, love interest. Love is in the air. And then you introduce Vanessa as a character, and they're introduced more or less at the same time as Alex bit the hell in half. I feel like that almost left something a little bit wanting as that almost an implied love arc. There's never any actual like romantic chemistry between the two. She's left in a coma.
Yes.
So it's not like it's ever paid off. It felt like it was almost setting something up, and it stopped it dead in its tracks. But throughout the movie, I kept wondering, like, are they going to pay it out? Are they going to pay it out? Like, is this going somewhere? And it didn't, and that's fine. There's a number of movies whose names elude me that kind of set that up and play with that love interest angle, and it doesn't amount to anything.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
That was a good movie. Recommend Guardians of the Galaxy 3 for like the two of you watching.
Bonus review. You came for Five Nights at Freddy's, but you stayed for the quick mention of Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
I don't know that this is necessarily something deliberate, but I feel that there was a certain vibe of other movies. And for me, it almost gave Shining vibes at the end with the idea of the building having a certain sense of malevolence and collapsing. And
Stephen King did write this movie.
He did not.
Stephen King's
Twitter fact check? No.
Stephen King's Five Nights at Freddy's.
At the end of this movie, you have the similar building, which represents a lot of evil bullshit, collapsing. It doesn't collapse the whole way, which I feel is kind of weird that they lock William Afton in this closet whenever it's implied the building's caving in.
Well, he can't move. It's not like he's going to get up and leave.
No, but I feel like the better thing would have just been they drag him off and the building collapses.
Sure,
just leave it open-ended. And they didn't do that because
they had to get the twitching because that's also part of the game.
The other thing I kind of thought, and this really has no backing because I haven't seen the movie, but it's just Sixth Sense with animatronics.
You heard it here first. Five Nights at Freddy's is as good as The Shining and The Sixth Sense put together.
I really expected the animatronics to be nothing more than like just kind of plot devices of like, oh, they're the big murder machines.
Yeah.
They did a very good job of giving the animatronics a certain amount of complexity. No one individually, but just all of
the
them.
group. They're collective.
Yeah, a certain amount of complexity. It made it interesting to watch. It was a very surprising moment of like, oh, they're not ripping this child to shreds. Like, they're actually just like tickling or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
It was honestly surprising, and I feel like that was almost kind of a make it or break it moment for the movie, and they made it. They did a very good job.
I really echo your sentiment. I do think that was a make it or break it moment. What would you say is your final score for Five Nights at Freddy's?
What are we doing out of 10?
We'll go out of 10. You can be harsh.
I don't want to be harsh. It's not that I don't want to be harsh. Like, I want to give it a 7 out of 10, but I feel like everything just aggregates to 7 out of 10. Like,
actually, I've done the math. Everything aggregates to about 4 out of 10.
Oh, that's right. This is the shitty movie channel.
I've done the math.
I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I would say that it's maybe a 6.5. I feel that it's decently well above average, and part of that, I'm sure, is that it betrays expectations and that it's like actually half decent. The acting was above average, pleasantly surprising. The writing was surprisingly good, but again, above average. I have to laud the set design, the practical effects, a lot of that there. And honestly, just in the moment, not thinking about it too much, it was a very good movie to watch. I'll give it the 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10.
You know, I was originally going to agree with you and give it the 7 out of 10, and then as I was sitting here, I thought about Matt Pat's performance again. And
that's right.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think Matt Pat's 30-second cameo, along with some of the other, like, fan things in the movie that you see, is enough to give it an 8 out of 10. Now, if you're a fan, it's not going to follow the lore exactly. You're going to be disappointed if you're hoping for somehow a perfect recreation of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. It's not book accurate. The movie itself is very good. The acting is fine. The writing is fine. The set pieces are nice. It's nice to see, after 8 years or so of waiting, Five Nights at Freddy's on the big screen.
Was this in development hell?
This has been in development hell for many years.
Lovely, I love it.
They were originally supposed to release it, I think, back in 2014 when the original books were coming out for Five Nights at Freddy. But I say it's an 8 out of 10. I recommend you see it in theaters. I think seeing this on the big screen would be very funny. I think it'd be very good. You obviously would prefer to see it in the comfort of your home. I agree with that.
Well, it depends. If your theater serves alcohol, go and see it. Otherwise...
But yeah, we both are giving this movie a thumbs up. 8 out of 10 for me, 7 out of 10 for John. So yeah, go see it. Alex, what did you think of the movie?
Oh my god, Chris, I thought you would never ask. Hey, what's up, y'all? So I know it's been a very, very hot second, but when Chris told me that we were going to be reviewing Five Nights at Freddy's, I had to come out of retirement. So I went to see Five Nights at Freddy's in theaters on October 28th with my friends, and I, like John, never once seen or played any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games or really any of the lore online. I just kind of went because all my friends were going, and you know me at this point in time. If there's one thing I love, it is a TV or movie adaptation of a video game that I have never played and will never play. But I just kind of went for the vibes, and the vibes were immaculate. So obviously this movie was really good. I thought it was great, and that's like kind of surprising to me because I don't like horror films at all. I hate horror films. They scare me. I couldn't watch Parasite by myself. Parasite freaked me out. Parasite's not even a horror film. When I watched Scream, I was screaming at parts that weren't even scary, okay? So I don't do horror films well, and yet I really liked this. And I think it partially has to do with Matthew Lillard. I think he's a phenomenal actor. He's like the king of horror films, with Scream, and not like necessarily that they're horror, but like Scooby-Doo is horror adjacent. It's mystery, it's monsters, it's spooky. But one thing that I do want to cover is Josh Hutcherson's performance, because I thought he was phenomenal, and I'm going to be completely 100% honest. He is the reason why I went to see this movie. I was a PETA girl the whole way through back when the Hunger Games were big. He is just a phenomenal actor, and I think he really hit the ball out of the park in this film. I've actually seen this movie twice. I watched it in theaters, and then I watched it on streaming last night with Franny Moo. Franny Moo, say hi. Yes, she really loved it. But one thing that I do have to say is that it's a good movie. 10 out of 10. Is it like, it's not Oscar winning. It's not an Oscar-winning movie, but it's fun. It's silly. It's goofy. It's scary. It has like all of the makings of like a bad cult classic film. It's campy, and it's campy in the way that only a movie about a very popular video game from 2014 can be campy. Fran, is there anything else you'd like to add? No. So yeah, that's all from us, but I will send it back to y'all. Ciao.
Great job, Alex. Thanks for your input. Thank you all for watching. Apologize our upload schedule is so sporadic. That probably won't be fixed, but we're going to try to make the episodes that do come out better to make the wait worth it.
I'll be cracking the whip over here.
If you like Jon, let us know in the comments. We'd like to potentially keep him on as a regular because that means he's got to watch the kind of movies we've seen on this channel
Please
regularly.
don't stop, no.
So let us know in the comments below how much you loved Jon on this episode. Comment below if you saw the movie, your thoughts on it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe. Leave your hateful remarks below about how stupid we look and how bad our opinions are.
It only boosts the algorithm.
We love the algorithm. Thank you again for watching. Your support means so much. We'll catch you next time where we're going to review another movie starring Matthew Lillard, Extreme Movie. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, Weirdflix watches what no one else will.
Listen,
Let us know in the comments if you want to see us play Five Nights at Freddy's.
if you include me, I'll kill you. I'll find you.